1.77 trillion. That's how much debt students in the US owe right now. It's not just a number, it's the lives of 44 million people struggling to escape from a system that profits off their future. Education was supposed to be a ticket for a better life, but now it's just a chain. Chain that only gets heavier as interest stacks up. Fees rise, but wages stay stagnant. The cost of a degree has far outpaced inflation. What once seemed like a bright future seems now like a lifelong burden. Yet we are being told that education is the key to success. But for millions, this key comes with a lock, which they'll never be able to open. This isn't just an American problem. The global student debt crisis is growing. Gen Z and millennials are delaying marriage, home ownership, and even retirement. The economy is feeling the strain. This is not just a personal problem, it is a system that's failing millions. Once education wasn't a luxury, colleges were affordable. Students weren't driving in debt, they were thriving. But that word is long gone, buried under a mountain of debt. So, how did we get here? It started with a hope. In 1944, the US government passed the GI Bill, offering free education to soldiers returning from war. Veterans flooded universities, eager to rebuild their lives. Cost nothing. The promise opportunities. In 1965, the promise expanded. The Higher Education Act created the Federal Student Loan Program. The idea? Everyone deserves a chance to education. But there was a catch. The government wasn't giving free money, they were handling student loans. Loans. Debt disguised as opportunities. The government guaranteed the loans. The banks, well, they couldn't lose. The seeds of today's crisis were quietly being planted. Back then, tuition costs were manageable. Families could pay them out of their pocket. But then, the colleges saw the golden goose. Federal Student Loan Program. Then that changed everything. And then colleges realized something sinister. Students could borrow endless money, then why not raise the tuition fees? And so they did. Slowly at first, faster later, like a predator circling its prey. Between 1980 and today, tuition fees rose by 1200%, and inflation just 200%. Do the math. Education didn't just get expensive, it became unattainable. It wasn't just about learning anymore, it was about selling a dream. Rock climbing walls, wellness centers, dining halls. Colleges weren't competing on academics, they were competing on lifestyle. Families signed up for a loan that they never understood, chasing a dream that never existed. A promise that a degree was a ticket to the upper class, but that ticket came with a fine print, decades of repayment. In 2010, the government made it worse. They stopped guaranteeing private loans and interests exploded. Now, loans weren't just hard to pay back, it was impossible. Degrees turned into death sentences. Students became prisoners of a system designed to exploit them. And the scariest part, this was by design. The student loan system was built this way. What started as a promise ended up as a trap. A 1.7 trillion trap that is still growing. And this was how student loan crisis was born. A system that promised opportunities but delivered chains. And those chains, they are pulling the entire generations under. Education. Once a symbol of knowledge and progress, now product. Colleges stopped teaching, they started selling. But selling what? Lifestyle. Campuses started competing, not to offer better academics, but to outdo each other with shiny new amenities. Why? Because they could charge more, and students, desperate for the dream, would pay. For 4 decades from $1,000 in 1980 to $10,000 today for public colleges. And for private colleges, triple that. Why? Because the students weren't paying up front, they were borrowing. And borrowing means unlimited spending. And where do you think this money went? Not to classrooms, not to research. It went to stadiums, luxury dorms, and administrators. In 1970, there was one administrator for every 84 students. Today, one for every 9. Colleges weren't expanding their education, they were inflating their payrolls. They had found the perfect scam. Government guaranteed loans, students borrowed blindly, and tuitions climbed higher. Every new program was supposed to help the students, but it actually fueled the fire. The result? A system where sports team gets millions and students sit in overcrowded lecture halls. A world where universities are brands and education is the marketing pitch. For students, the dream sold by colleges became a nightmare. They graduated into a world where wages hadn't kept up with the costs. Their degrees didn't open them doors. They buried them under debt. Then came the for-profit colleges. Private companies preying on desperation. They promised quick degrees and high-paying jobs. Instead, they delivered worthless diplomas with huge debts. These schools didn't just scam students, they ruined lives. By the time these schools got closed, the damage was done. Thousands of students were left with nothing but debts. Education isn't just a noble pursuit anymore, it's a $1 trillion industry, and students are their products and consumers. When colleges turned into corporations, profits came first. Students, they were collateral damage, and the ones paying the price, that is all of us. Student loans doesn't stay the same, they grow. Interest compounds, and before you know it, what you owe is more than your degree's worth. So let's break this down. Let's say you borrow 30,000 on a typical federal loan with an interest rate of 4.99%. That interest alone is nearly 1500 in the first year. Sounds manageable, right? But by year 3, your loan balance has already increased to 35,000 because interest doesn't just sit there, it grows. It's a silent predator. It doesn't just add a little here and there, it piles up. That 30,000 loan, if left untouched for 5 years, can balloon up to 45,000 debt. In a decade, it's more than 60 grand. You're paying off this loan, but interest is eating your ability to save, to invest, build a future. The new car, not possible. Buying a home, well, that's decades away. Your financial freedom gets squeezed until it's impossible for you to even breathe. Interest isn't just about money, it's about time. The longer you take to pay off the loan, the more you end up paying at the end. That's what starts an opportunity. Investment in education becomes a financial trap. It doesn't just affect the borrower, it ripples through every part of their future. No one plans to get stuck in debt for decades. But student loans just doesn't care about your timeline. Interest doesn't just add up, it traps you for life. Home ownership rates among millennials have plummeted. In 2023, only 38% of Americans aged 25 to 34 owned homes, compared to 45% in 2005. Raising student debt is a key factor behind this decline, locking young adults out of the housing market. Student debt isn't just financial, it affects personal relationships. Nearly 70% of millennials report money troubles affecting their romantic relationships, with many delaying and even avoiding marriage because of financial strain. In 2023, student loan debt cost the US economy over 100 billion in lost consumer spending. Young adults stuck with debt aren't buying homes, cars, or any major goods, halting entire industries. Student debt is holding back an entire generation from contributing to the economy. With $1.7 trillion stuck in student debt, young adults aren't making big purchases, affecting real estate and even retail. This frustration is driving a cultural shift. Gen Z and millennials are increasingly vocal about need for a systemic change. Not only in education, but also the financial systems that trap them. The emotional toll is just as severe. In a recent study by an American Psychological Association, found that borrowers with high student debt are 3 times more likely to report a poor mental health than those without debt. For many, student debt feels like a shadow. It's not just about money, it's constant stress and anxiety, feeling of being trapped. Older generations never really understand the debt crisis. In 1980, the cost of a public university degree was about 10 grands, adjusted for inflation. Today, it's 25 grands. Meanwhile, wages have only increased by 17% over the same period. The gap between the cost of education and earning capabilities after graduation has never been wider. The system that worked for previous generations has broken down for today's students. Countries like Germany and Finland have embraced a different model. In these countries, higher education is either free or highly subsidized, ensuring that debt doesn't shackle students upon graduation. Young people are now questioning the system, and social media platforms are alive with the discussions about the myths of an American dream. Students are calling out the system on TikTok, Twitter, and Instagram. This isn't just about money. It's a challenge to the very ideals that shaped up a generation, but recognizing a problem is the first step towards a solution. We have painted a dark picture so far, but there is light at the end of this tunnel. The student loan crisis isn't a problem, it's a challenge. And like every challenge, there are ways to overcome it. Let's start with the critical question. Is every degree worth it? Does this degree align with the career that is in demand? Look at the placement rates, the starting salaries, and growth potential in your respective fields. Degrees in medicine, law, and engineering often lead to stable careers. But taking a six-figure debt for an undergraduate degree, that too in a niche subject, that is a financial gamble. Not all colleges are created equal. Research. Compare tuition fees. Look at the alternatives like community colleges, apprenticeships, or online programs. Education doesn't have to bankrupt you. Here's the harsh truth. 18-year-olds signing those loan papers have no idea what they are getting into. They are handed over thousands of dollars and being told that it's an investment for their future, but no one explains how interests work and debt accumulates. This is where financial literacy comes in. Before you borrow, calculate how much you'll owe, what will your monthly payments be, and whether your future income supports it. Don't rely on hope, rely on numbers. Debt forgiveness programs have made headlines in recent years, but let's face it, forgiving existing debt doesn't clear the root problems. If we don't address rising tuition costs and predatory lendings, we are just putting out fires while the new ones ignite. Real reform means holding colleges accountable, capping tuition fees, and funding education like the public good it is. As we have already seen, some countries like Germany and Finland offer free or low cost higher education. Why can't others follow this? We also need to rethink what education means. Does everyone need a traditional 4-year degree? Or can skill based training and vocational programs offer better career paths for many students? Industries like tech, healthcare, and skilled trades are desperate for workers, and many of these careers don't require a bachelor's degree. By exploring alternatives, many students can avoid debt and still build a successful career. There's no one size that fits all paths to success. The goal is not to avoid debt. The goal is to find a path that aligns with your passion, skills, and financial goals. For many students, the problem isn't ambition, it's guidance. At 17 or 18, most of us don't exactly know what do we want to do with the rest of our lives. And yet, that's when we are asked to make one of the biggest financial decisions of our lives. Parents, educators, and policymakers need to step up, teach financial literacy in schools, provide better career counseling, and stop pressurizing each student to follow the same career path. Education should open doors, not close them. It should uplift people, not weigh them down. And while the road ahead is challenging, it's not impossible. Together, we can change the narrative. One decision, one student, one reform at a time. Where do we go from here? Can we reimagine a future where education genuinely uplifts people rather than holding them back? To truly address this, we need to rethink our higher education from the ground level. That means challenging the very assumptions that we held for decades. Imagine a world where education isn't a commodity, but a service, where tuition is capped, unnecessary administrative costs are slashed, and government's funding is restored to ensure accessibility for all. Countries like Germany and Finland have shown us what's possible. Their system aren't perfect, but they have shown us that affordable, high quality education isn't a fantasy. For too long, students have been treated as customers. It's time to change that narrative. Education should empower students, not exploit them. Let's talk about accountability. For too long, colleges have high tuition fees, spending lavishly on amenities and administrative salaries. It's time to hold them to account. Policy changes like tuition caps, stricter regulations of for profit institutions, and transparency in how colleges spend their money could force universities to prioritize education over profits. We need lawmakers to step up, not just with debt forgiveness programs, but with reforms that prevents future generations from falling into the same traps. But maybe the most profound change needs to happen within us. For decades, we have equated success with degrees from prestigious universities. But is that the only path? Success isn't just a name on a certificate. It's finding a path that aligns with your skills, goals, and passion. It's about creating a life that's meaningful to you, not that which conforms to someone else's expectations. Student loan crisis is a reminder that we have lost our way. It's also an opportunity, a chance to reimaginate what education should be. Create a future where every student can dream without fear, learn without limits, and succeed without a debt. These stories remind us that behind every debt balance, there is a person, someone who wanted a better life, someone who believed in the promise of education. As viewers, you have the power. Share this video, start conversations, educate yourself and others about the true cost of student loans. If you are a student, be strategic about your education. If you are a voter, demand better policies from your leaders. Change doesn't happen overnight. It starts with awareness, and awareness starts with you. This channel isn't about fear, it's about hope. We dive into the harsh truths, not to scare you, but to arm you with knowledge. Because knowledge is power. And power is what you need to change the system.